Hey guys, this is the very first Heart Talk. This is a place where we sit down with people, with family, and just really flesh out what it looks like to walk out as Christ, whatever topic we're facing. And this month it happens to be trials. So we have Alzavian T. Jones and Peter K. Lewis sitting down and talking about how not all trials were created equal, but also practical handles as to how to overcome. And so we want to go ahead and invite you to keep watching and share it with a friend if it blesses you.
What's up, everyone? Peter here with my good man,
Alzavian.
Alzavian. Hey, this is once again, a new series we're doing on the Braveheart podcast called Heart Talks, or if you say it fast, it can sound like Hard Talks, which it might get a little bit hard. We're gonna just unpack some of the stuff from the gospel perspective, share a little bit of our lives, a little bit behind the scenes into our story today, and so really excited for you to listen in. Alzavian and I have been walking together for what? I always make up a number. Do we actually know?
I don't think we know.
It's like 5 years.
5 years, yeah.
Yeah, he's been one of my dearest friends, just an amazing man of God. And so we're going to share a little bit of our story with you today, where we've been, but we also really want to talk about on this Heart Talk, we want to talk about trials and suffering. And I know a lot of you have been in a trial, maybe you're in one right now. And so hopefully our conversation will strengthen you and will encourage you and just give you a gospel perspective on what you're going through and just know that, man, you're not alone. Because you and I both have been through a lot, you know?
Yeah.
And I said to him earlier, we were grabbing coffee, I was like, not all trials are created equal. And so we'll maybe unpack that a little bit. But before we get into that, man, tell people just about our journey from your perspective. And yeah, I mean,
The whole journey.
Yeah, I mean, not the whole journey, but like, I mean, you got to give people context. Y'all got to know something about Alzavian. Alzavian will start talking without any context. He'll just start a story like chapter 4, and you're like, bro, I need the intro, the foreword, chapter 1, 2, and 3 to catch up with what you're saying.
Yeah.
So no, just give them, you know what? Just open up chapter 7, chapter 10, whatever you feel like.
Okay,
just open your mouth.
So, first off, let's just start. Can I talk about the James Franco part?
That's fine.
Okay, great. So, basically, I had met a man named James Franco on a set, and
Is this verified?
yeah, I mean, well, it is kind of, sort of.
Because this is going out there. I mean, is James Franco going to like write in and say this never happened?
I met him. Yeah, we were face to face. Me and James Franco.
All right, that's fine.
And I encountered a light, and I was saved.
You encountered a light.
A light, like this light just binging, and
I said you were starstruck.
yeah, but I really was not starstruck. I was not. James Franco had this light on him, and I didn't even know he had the shade toes. So then check this out. I encountered this light, and he's asking me questions, and I really couldn't, because I was trying to process my walk with the Lord, you know. And as I was on a transition, you know, in that time. But anyway, all that to say, I encountered this cool man, but also a light that was upon him, and I really felt like the Lord was bringing conviction to my life into the next season. All that to say, I was going to upper room, and I remember, Peter, you were speaking, and I didn't understand nothing you were saying. But
because your mind wasn't renewed.
Yes. And I mean, he was talking the gospel, but there was this power just hitting me, and I was like, man, there's something up with this man. And I remember going into a prayer set one day, about to go in, and you were leaving out. And there was just this light radiating off of you.
The similar James Franco light.
Yeah, but I mean, you don't like I don't know.
God used it to speak to you.
Yeah, so you're walking out, and I'm coming in, but then also I forgot to tell you, you were going slow, like a movie.
Like slow-mo.
Slow-mo, and your hair was just flopping in the wind.
Praise God.
Just glowing, and I was like, that man knows the Lord. And then one day, I remember I was at a coffee shop with you. Well, I wasn't with you. I went into the coffee shop. It was Oakland Coffee. Mm-hmm. And you were ministering to this guy, and I was like, man, I want some of that. And I said it out loud. Before I knew it, I said it out loud. And you looked at me, you were like, do you? And I was like, no. So I walked off.
That sounds dramatic.
You did say it like that. You were like,
maybe I did.
You were like, do you? And I was like, oh no, maybe I don't.
Maybe I was in the spirit.
Basically, I guess I did start in chapter 7. But anyway, I remember you wanted to meet and have like either coffee or lunch.
I think you wanted to share your testimony with me.
I shared my testimony with you.
And that's what kind of sparked our friendship, and we started walking together. And I had been simultaneously praying. I said, God, if you want me to, I didn't know about discipleship. Like discipleship was like a weird, you know, oh, you meet once a week for coffee and you do a Bible study and accountability. And I just, for me, I felt like God was trying to give me a different framework of like this concept of what does it look like to form Christ in somebody? Wow. You know, like what does it look like to walk with somebody and help them, you know, through real life, through relationship issues and job transitions and all the stuff we've walked through the last 5 years, to see the gospel really take root in someone's life. And I've been praying, God, if you want that, then bring people to me, like highlight them. Wow. And so you were highlighted to me. And I remember I was like, I don't know if this guy, like I was suspicious of your joy and your smile. Cause I was like, no one can be this joyful. Like no one can be this like, and so I thought you were just kind of flaky. And so you were like, we somehow figured out we're going to walk together.
Well, see, I don't know if you know this. Julian, we were in the car with Julian. And we will always meet up at your second upper room. You got a second upper room at, what is it called?
Central Market.
Central Market.
Yep.
Central Market.
Don't say which one though. Okay, people come.
So
that's my back cave hideout.
Glory place. I remember I was in the car and I was battling with the reality that I didn't understand the gospel, but I knew that there was power in it because of your life. Like, I'm just going to share this reality. I didn't start getting the gospel through your teachings and your preaching. I got the gospel through his living. Like, he would live out Monday through Friday. Then on that Sunday, he would preach what he was living. And I was understanding as I saw him walk out his life.
You didn't mention Saturday. Did I wild out
Saturday,
on Saturday?
I never did see you on Saturday. I think you kept that sanctified.
I just wild out on Saturday. Got in my flesh. I got in my flesh on Saturday.
I mean,
probably.
I'm pretty sure he was about it.
I probably did.
No, I mean.
No, but that's, you're saying, it was the connection.
And that really impacted my life because I'm that type of guy is like, you can't tell me to go and get the ranch and then pull it up and then take the boats out. And then after you take the boats out, show me.
I have no idea what you're talking about there.
I'm talking about changing the tire.
Oh,
you
see what I'm saying? He did it. He just jumped to changing a tire. We didn't even know.
I mean, you can't just give me the instructions and tell it to me unless you show me how to do it so I can do it when you're not there. So, I mean, that's something that you showed me in life. But I want to get on when I went into Central Market to talk to you. I was talking to Julian, and I was like, man, I don't think I can do this. I don't understand this, da-da-da. And I remember coming up to you, being in the light and sharing that reality, and you were like, bro, you don't have to do anything. You can just be here. That delivered me.
Because were you expecting some big program and some big thing to do?
Yeah, I had to do something. I felt like I had to do something to be approved. Yeah. And there was a lot that I was dealing with. Like, I was on works all the time. Like, I felt like I had to do so much to be accepted by God and by man. And I was just delivered by seeing his life. And I was still trying to, when you would live out your day-to-day life, you would say things like, in the pulpit or day-to-day, you'd be like, I don't have to stay and be with the Lord for 5 hours to receive his love. I'm like, wait, what? I'm like, what am I doing with this guy? He doesn't even believe in 5 hours being, because I would stay 5 hours, and be with the Lord. And then when my conscience was clean towards him, I could, just live out.
Yeah. And it's worth mentioning that the 5 hours with him is amazing if you're actually with him.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's the 5 hours of your own strength trying to find him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That was the point. Because, back when I was in my Finland soccer playing days, man, I would spend 6-7 hours just alone with God, And so it's not a matter of the activity itself. It was the motive in what was going on. And But I wanna jump to this because we're gonna hop into this trials thing, but we've walked together for 5 years. Yeah. We went and visited a church, Kingdom Movement, in Vancouver, Washington, in April. Guys, go check them out. I fell in love with this community. Just beautiful people who love Jesus. Yeah. I told Alzavian, it was Alzavian's fault because you met the guys at Jesus Image and they were like, hey, we need to connect Peter. And so finally connected with the pastor there. We went to visit. It was an amazing time, just a beautiful Jesus-loving community. And then we got back and the Lord spoke to both of us independently that you were going to go there this summer and minister and pour into their young adults and run with the gospel. And I think we've known since we've been walking together that you have a calling to run with the gospel, preach the gospel. We just didn't know what it would look like, And so I remember you were there this summer. I was on Instagram and I saw you with a whiteboard, teaching the gospel, preaching the gospel, and it panned around and showed these people and you were owning it. And it was this weird moment where I was like, it's gonna sound weird, but I felt like a proud dad. It was like, I saw me in you, with the whiteboard action, but it was fully you. You weren't trying to be me.
Yeah.
I wasn't there, you were just owning it. And people were feasting on the gospel. And man, God has called you. Alzavian is leaving Dallas. This is the announcement.
Yeah.
And he's not leaving my heart, our hearts, our team, but you're leaving Dallas and you're going to go move to Vancouver, Washington to run with the gospel with Kingdom Movement. And so just share briefly like that from your perspective, because for me, it's very fulfilling. Correct. It's bittersweet. Right. I'm like, man, I'm going to miss having you with me by my side, running with me day in and day out. But it's also fulfilling because I've seen Christ be formed in you. Correct. And I'm seeing you now take this same torch and begin to run in another part of the country and strengthen an already an amazing, beautiful, glorious church. And so just from your perspective, give a few highlights because, man, I'm super excited for you in this next chapter.
Thank you. I would say the crazy thing about, one of the highlights I would say is this. The first week, me being with the guys and ministering the gospel, it's different. It was different. At that moment, I was faced with fear of man. And I thought, there was just this reality of okay, I have this, I don't know what's about to happen, I don't know what the response is going to be. But at that moment, when I first spoke the words of the mission, what we're going to go do, freedom from sin, the gospel, the fullness of the gospel, and I started sharing the fullness of the gospel, at that moment, there was a edge.
A line.
Yeah, a line. And at that moment, it was I saw it, and I was like, either I'm going to step over this or I'm going to stand behind this. I'm going to stand behind. And I just threw myself off the cliff. And I just started declaring the fullness of the gospel. And as I started declaring it, I felt a grace, and I felt God actually push me as I started. Like, and I'm like, okay, I can do it. It's like I'm flapping my wings, you know.
Wow.
And then as the things that would happen in your class, I've been in many of classes with Peter.
This man has heard me preach more than any other human alive. And the fact that he's still friends with me is incredible. I guess a good sign.
Yeah, the gospel is really, man,
it's fresh.
It stir you up. And as I would look around the room when I was in your classes and see the light bulbs happen and the, oh my gosh, happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say something and I would see the same thing happen. And I'm like, oh crap. Oh, I'm about to hit this. I just hit it. I just continue to hit the gospel.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, man, that was 1 week. Second week, I was like, man, we need to get a whiteboard. I think I'm in this thing, you know? So we ended up getting the whiteboard, and then everything that these 5 years, I started seeing as this thing is in me. Mm-hmm. And I truly believe this. And then, and I'm able to give it to someone else.
Yeah.
And they can take it way farther than I could take it.
Yes.
In their area of influence, right?
Yeah.
So that started happening, but then this is the crazy part of it. That's all good. Like, anyone can teach, preach, but it's the living out, the day-by-day living out. I felt as I proclaimed, Peter, that after we were done, that 3 or 2 hours that we were done, there was a demand of the word and what I believe to live it out. Mm. And it was actually a grace. Like, there was things that I mean, like, you know, you say little things like picking up trash that you dropped and not walking. Like, it was just so, like, highlighted when I was there. It's like the Lord was
like the fear of the Lord.
Yeah.
You're aware of your life matters now. If you're going to stand in a place of proclaiming the gospel, of teaching it, like, your life better match up and be worthy of the gospel, like Paul said. Yeah. I mean, that's so real.
Yes. So, I mean, there was just realities that I was going through in that. What else? Another highlight would be, man, just seeing the young adults there encounter it and own it for themselves, and and the hunger that's there, man.
It's beautiful. It's really pure. If you're in the Vancouver area, just go check those guys out anywhere in the Pacific Northwest. They're just amazing. Yeah. So in that, I'm going to tell you something. Okay. As your friend, as your brother, I'm going to read something to you. Okay. It won't be new, won't be shocking, but this is going to tie us into our segment on discussing trials, because I think it's really important. So Paul, where's it at here? Paul went to a town, here it is, called Lystra, Acts chapter 14. And so I'm going to read this to you, bro. This is real. Okay. You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
So the Jews came from Antioch and Iconium, and having persuaded the crowds, they stoned Paul and dragged him out of the city, supposing that he was dead. So these guys he was ministering to turned on him. I'm not prophesying that part. But they turned on him and they stoned him to death, and they drug him out of the city. But when the disciples gathered about him, he rose up and entered the city. And on the next day, he went on with Barnabas to Derbe. And when they had preached the gospel to that city and had made many disciples, they returned to Lystra and Iconium and to Antioch. Listen, strengthening the souls of the disciples, encouraging them to continue in the faith, and saying, he's going to give them the message, and saying that through many tribulations we must enter the kingdom of God.
Wow.
And so here's the thing we're promised. We are promised from Jesus troubles, tribulations, trials. You will face trials in Portland. But here's what I know about you. That just like Paul, when he was stoned to death, and you would think that he would say, wow, I need to take a sabbatical. I'm going to come back home, tuck my tail and run. These people, this is hard ground. It says he got up and went to the next town, preached the gospel, made disciples, then returned back to that town and said, hey guys, I want to remind you, I'm going to strengthen your faith, I want to encourage your heart, but to enter the kingdom of God, we're going to go through many trials. Yeah. And so when we approach this topic of trials, give an example of a trial that you walked through. Because the purpose of this, I think my heart is, I want believers to be encouraged to not throw in the towel just because it gets hard. Like persecution's coming to the church, 100%. Yeah. It's already here. And I see a lot of believers losing heart, losing faith in the midst of a trial. So how do you specifically, maybe number one, what are some bad perspectives you've had in a trial? Maybe we could start there. What was the trial, and then what were you tempted with to believe in that?
A wrong view of a trial I've been in.
Well, what was the trial? Describe the trial. Oh, because not all trials are created equal. Getting a flat tire, and like I said earlier today, losing my son on the beach for 20 minutes a couple weeks ago, thinking he was kidnapped or had gotten drowned. That's not the same type of trial.
Yeah, and I've been in a trial about, you remember that time I'd locked my key, or I'd broken my key into the ignition, and everything was just going fine. Then everything just started happening at once. Then I get a ticket, then I get another ticket, and now I got to go to court, and all this stuff is happening. And I'm like, oh, I bind that devil right now, and I'm like, I'm blaming it on the devil, and I'm blaming it on all these. I'm like, well, maybe I did something wrong, and I'm thinking about what did I do that caused this to happen?
Mm-hmm. You started introspecting. You started looking at yourself in light of the trial. What door did I open?
What did I do for this to happen? Was I supposed to go to this event? I'm trying to figure it out, And I remember in the coffee shop, I'm sitting there and I read something from 2 Peter or 1 Peter where it says, do not think it's strange when you meet various trials of many kind of various trials. Or something like that. And
basically, don't think it's crazy when you go through hard stuff. Yeah. Stop trying to figure it all out.
Yeah. So I was like, whoa, that's the Lord speaking to me. And I was like, okay, cool. Okay. All right.
Wow.
But I mean, later on, I found out that, man, trials are to come, and they're supposed to be counted as joy, right? And I would say that was one of the ones that I was like, and then I've had many more big trials. There's different types of trials, like you said. But even the trial with my brother, I think was a tough for me.
High level, what was that trial, in case people can relate to that? And how did you respond, and how did God father you through that?
Yeah, so my brother was on drugs, and I was on a rampage for maybe 8 months of just going out trying to find him, trying to strengthen my family.
You were worried about him.
I was so worried about him, yeah. And there was days where I would, and I just felt like.
What was the fear?
The fear was death, but also the fear was also that.
That he would die?
That he would die. And the fear was that my mom and my sister would think that there was something that they were doing. Or there was something that there was another thing. I was like, man, I need to call my mom and tell my mom that she's an amazing mother.
Wow.
And that this is not happening because of her mothering. This is not connected. So it was a lot of.
Let me unpack that, because you had simultaneous fear for your brother. Could you tell when you were doing things out of fear? Could you tell when you were praying out of fear? Or yes. How? How could you tell?
Okay, I remember when it first started happening, my mom called me and she told me to come to the hospital, and my brother was locked up because he was in the influence of drugs, and at that moment I was I started feeling panic mode, and then I started like rebuking the devil again, and I started like trying to cast out a demon in him, and I was just trying to like war against hell and the devil, and I was doing it out of a place of like defeat. I was already defeated in that moment.
You were doing it looking at the condition of your brother instead of seeing with the eyes of faith that Jesus had overcome and praying from that place.
And I noticed, and then when I took a step back, and I was like, wait a minute, this is not right. And I looked at my mom, and I'm like, if she see me walking out the faith that I believe in this way, she would never learn how to stand firm, right? Mm-hmm. So I started doing it like this. I started looking at my brother in the place of where he would be. So I had a perspective of my brother. And I remember he came into my room one day to sleep, and I looked at him and said, brother, look at me. And he's like, not trying to look. I was like, hey, you're going to get through this. We're with you. Like, I'm bringing hope. I'm bringing hope. And there was some days that I felt like I had to swim up. I had to keep breathing. Yeah. But, man, like, there was something that I was beholding, and it was Jesus. And there was a hope, there was an assurance that my brother would make it through this problem, right?
Yes.
I remember my mom called me one day, and she just bust out crying. She was like, how do you do it? Man, I just start weeping because, one, I thought she was calling to tell me my brother's gone because she's crying. But she's saying, Alzavian, how are you standing through how Twan doing this? Like, how are you standing? How are you keep going? I'm like, Mom, it's not me. I'm actually beholding the Lord, and I'm able to refresh her heart when she calls and needs a word, or my sister, or even my brother. And I'm like, I'm looking to the Lord. I'm looking to the Lord. Like, I know that this is not brother's last. Like, he's gonna be able to witness and show how God brought him out of this dark time, you know?
Wow.
And I was sure that.
But the only way you could say that was because you weren't just looking at the trial.
Correct.
You were looking at the trial through the person.
Correct.
In the lens of Jesus Christ and his victory over sin, over death. I mean, is that fair? But like, you didn't do that all the time. Like, there was sometimes you got the fear and you would call me and you'd be in it, right? Yeah. And so this isn't like some tightrope where like, oh man, if you're not responding 24/7 the right way. I think it is, though. I think what I want us like to unpack is like, how do you take your eyes off of that thing and practically set them on the Lord, whatever the trial may be. Like, it could be sickness, it could be disease, it could be betrayal, it could be sin, someone's living in rebellion, it could be a diagnosis, it could be you're being mistreated at your job, you know? And so it's like, how do you not allow the pain of that, the fear of that, to fill your consciousness and to cause you to do all these things, trying to control it? Because that's really what happens, right? Like, we get afraid, and when you get afraid, you start trying to control.
That's the other thing with that. Man, that's so good. So that day she called and was asking how, I was like, Mama, it's because you are trying to control brother. You're feeling all of what he's feeling. It's because what I did was also I let go of control. Because there was moments where I would be on find my friends and looking for him to go to the place where he's at to try to get him, and I had to take my hands off and be like, no, God has this. If I'm putting my hands on, that means I don't have faith in what he's doing, you know?
Yes.
And I said, Mom, you have to let go of control and let brother release him and also and receive nourishment from the Father, right? So what I did, when you said that about control and me beholding the Lord, I think it was more of a place of me not allowing fear. I think it was fear, not allowing fear to be my response, but let faith be my response. Meaning, like, there was times when my mom would share things, and I would listen to her, and I would listen to her. The things that are happening, I would listen to her, and I really wouldn't give it a response to what she was. I felt like I was feeding fear if I would give response that she wanted. So what I would do is I would listen to her. I'm like, okay, cool, and then she'd be like, never mind, and she hangs the phone up, and I go and be before the Lord, and I sit, and I get a different perspective through the lens of Jesus and of peace. And then I would call her back with an answer, but it will be influenced by the Lord.
Wow.
And she would have peace about what was going on, and she would take her hands from that situation that was happening.
So that, you just dropped a bomb, because this could be revelatory for people listening. To have peace in the midst of a painful trial is fundamentally supernatural.
Yeah.
The world cannot have peace in a trial because they have no anchor for their soul.
Yeah.
They don't have another lens to look at the cancer diagnosis, the job loss, the financial, are the finances going to come in? But we have this promise from Jesus. It says this in John 16:33. I have said these things to you, that in me you may have peace. What was he talking about? He was talking about, I'm leaving.
Yeah. Wow.
I'm gonna leave. You're gonna be scattered. I'm not gonna be with you anymore.
Wow.
And he says this weird phrase, I have said these things to you, that in me, that's a huge in me, you may have peace. So the peace in a trial is only in him.
There it is.
You have to be in him, which means to be in him, you have to see him. Who is he? Where is he? What's he doing? Now look, we all know this. In the world, you will have tribulation. Yeah. He promised it. Yeah. So if you're in a trial, if you're in a tribulation, just know that Jesus promised. But here's the even greater promise. But take heart. Take heart, meaning don't allow that trial to make you lose heart.
Yeah. Yeah.
To give up hope, to lose your peace. Yeah. He says, why? Why would you take heart? Because I, Jesus, have overcome the world. This promise is for everyone in covenant with God.
Wow.
Everyone who's been born again. And so we know this is the challenge in every trial. Lord, you've overcome the world, but I need to see you. Yeah. I need to see how you've overcome. I need to see how much, like, you're victorious over cancer. Yeah. I need to see you're victorious over betrayal. I need to see you're victorious over a financial lack. Jesus. And so the challenge really becomes what you look at and what you listen to. I mean, to be honest, I think a lot of people today are in self-inflicted trials because of what they're looking at, what they're listening to. They're feeding on the news about COVID. They're feeding on conspiracies. Yeah. They're looking at all the trials. Now listen, some people, it's self-inflicted. Like if all you're doing is beholding the trials of the world, you will be discouraged, anxious, not have peace, fearful. And so my encouragement, and again, I'm tempted to this sometimes, like if I start to feel my soul get troubled, I know immediately, well, I don't know immediately, that's why it's troubled, but the Lord shows me, watch what you're looking at. Yeah. What are you looking at? What are you listening to? And 99.9% of the time, it's because I've taken my eyes off of the triumphant, glorious, majestic Son of God who's overcome the world. He's conquered the death. He's crucified my flesh. There's nothing, I repeat, nothing that I will face in this world that could ever destroy my soul. He says, don't fear the one that can kill your soul, or that can kill your body. Yeah. Fear God. Right? Like the one we serve has conquered death. He's destroyed the devil. So some people get so caught up, and you said this is so good, Alzavian. We get caught up. I get caught up. I've been in 2 weeks of trials that I feel like broke through last weekend, but it's like, why is this happening? Yeah. What's the source of this? Yeah. And we get all confused and introspective. And I think I've realized, is it the devil? Is it God? I don't really care. I want to come to a posture of, Lord, I know I'm going to overcome. and I'm going to have peace. I'm not going to surrender peace.
Yes.
That's kind of where I'm at now. I'm like, you know
Wow.
what? I'm not going to surrender my peace in exchange for fear. And I think that's like step one to having a gospel perspective on a trial is like, we can have peace no matter what.
Yes.
No matter what the issue, no matter how painful, no matter how
Yes.
deep, through a revelation of Christ, we can have peace. And so what would you tell someone as we kind of close here? Like, man, they're in a trial. Not all trials are created equal. Doesn't matter what it is. But what would you tell them are some practicals? Like if they feel like fear is on top of them, like just a spirit of heaviness, grief, sorrow. Again, there's some really intense stuff happening in the world. People are dying. There's wicked stuff all over the news. There's perversion, right? Like there's real pain people are dealing with. And it's not that God is not compassionate or loving, but like how would you encourage someone practically if they're being overcome by fear to come back to that place of peace?
You know what? I would say to get along with the Lord and receive love. Get along with the Lord and find hope in Him. Like most of the time, my fights were won because I got from out of the chaos, what was going on, and I started hearing what He was saying to me and seeing what He was doing. And that looked like me just going into my room and sitting with the things that were trying to oppress me and the things that I was thinking that was not in believing in Him and in what He's done. So I would say just to go and be with the Lord. Go and be with the Lord and find peace in Him.
And you do this, and I know you do this, and we'll actually, we're going to model a time of prayer that hopefully could encourage you. Of like, if you're in a trial, here in another episode, you can check it out. We're going to model what it looks like to pray in the midst of a trial. But when you're alone with God, is there value in saying, God, I'm scared, I'm fearful?
Yeah.
I'm like being honest with where you're at and not trying to pretend and be like, oh, let me jump to rejoicing and count it all joy. And like, you may not be able to count it joy and rejoice until you get a perspective of Jesus and receive His love, receive like, and to be honest with where you're at. Yeah. And so like, hey, Dad, Father, I am terrified. This trial is crushing me. Yeah. And I want to bring my heart before you. I don't want to lose heart. I want to take heart, but right now I feel blind to you. Yeah. And to say that, like, right? I mean, you do that.
I would say this. I even also had a prayer about that trial with my brother and my mom, because my mom had this reality. She would behold me and see peace and see calmness and see joy. And I would go and she would come after me because she was like, you don't care. I'm like, oh, I do care, but I've been in there with the Lord. Wow. And I used to get before the Lord. I'm like, Lord, and I would be crying. I'd be like, Father, like my mom thinks this, but Lord, you know you've given me this peace and this joy to go through this trial. And I'm like, Lord, I'm scared. I am scared. Like I'm carrying the burdens of my mom and my sister and my brother and my whole family and what's going on. And I'm like, Lord, like, will you give them peace, Lord?
And you'd release that burden to the Lord.
Release that burden to the Lord. And sometimes she would call back feeling at peace. And you know, and I would say like the prayer is, I don't know what to do, Lord. I don't know how to do. What do I do? Like, it's crazy to go and knock on the door of His location and get myself. That's not wise. But Lord, what do I do? What do I do in this moment? And the Lord will give me peace, but I pray like that. I pray in the reality of like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to believe right now. I feel like my brother is like literally trying to take his life away because of hurt and pain from his past, you know?
Yes.
You know?
It's really good. So, and I think you can take that, and if anyone's listening going through a trial, you can take that, get alone with God, be honest with yourself. And if you feel overcome too, find Find someone you know who's maybe outside of the trial, who can speak into you, who can give you that perspective when you lose it. You're not meant to do this alone. And as we close, I would just say this, Hebrews chapter 2, about Jesus conquering death, delivering us from fear. But look at what he says. Know this, that if you are in a painful trial, it says, therefore Jesus had to be made like his brothers in every respect, so that he might become a merciful and faithful high priest in the service of God, to make propitiation for the sins of the people. For because he himself has suffered when tempted, he is able to help those who are being tempted. This is not just talking about temptation to sin, it's talking about a temptation to despair in a trial. It's talking about a temptation to not believe that there's going to be a better outcome and a breakthrough. And so know this, that if you're in that place, you have one in heaven who has suffered, and he's faced that temptation, and he's faced that trial, and he's praying for you, and he's ministering his Holy Spirit to you. And so, guys, we love you. We hope this encouraged you. We hope this helps you adopt a gospel perspective on trials and on suffering.
Hey guys, thank you so much for watching Heart Talk. We are praying that it blesses you. As a team, we were so encouraged to see what the past 5 years of walking out life together has done and how trials have been overcome by the blood of Jesus. If it blessed you, go ahead and leave a comment down below. We want to hear from you. Tell us about your testimony, where you're joining us from. Also, make sure to comment, like, and subscribe, and we cannot wait to see you. We're so honored to be running with you. We will see you next week with a sermon of the month on trials.